Okay, now we'll go to the next speaker. Next speaker will be Sarah Robertson. Sarah is a former director on the board at Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo Region. She's employed in the child welfare sector and is a survivor of intimate partner violence. She is an advocate for supports and resources for families that have experienced violence and seeks to improve how we assess risk to women and children. And interestingly, one of the topics that Sarah will be talking about is coercive control. And interestingly, too, Sarah and I were discussing this, and I saw recently that I think it was an MPP, was talking about introducing, I don't know, was it an MP or an MPP, maybe an MP, introducing some legislation to combat or deal with coercive control because her own sister was going through a situation. So very timely topic and issue, and it's something very important. So Sarah, thanks for being with us tonight, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jen and Christine, for starting us off on this very intense topic. Of course, I'm listening and there's so many great points that have already been made, and we still have lots of speakers ahead of us to talk more about the different components of domestic violence. As Rob mentioned, I have experience as a survivor of domestic violence. And so I was thinking about, what would be important to share that might be a little different than the other speakers tonight. And so I was trying to reflect on some of the key things that were part of my experience and even now still trying to cope with as a survivor. And included in that is understanding coercive control, because quite frankly, even though I was in the system and I did training, I never really saw the signs until I was well into the situation. And why is that a very common starting point for domestic violence involves love bombing. And that's an expression you may or may not have heard yet, but really it's about this extreme pouring of affection and intense romance and signs of, indicators, you think, of love at the onset. And it happens very quickly. And it is with the intention of manipulation, but you don't really understand that. I mean, most of us are humans, we want to be loved in connections and have connections with others and in meaningful relationships. And so if you're not exposed to it, and I was not, I was raised in a home where my parents were intact and I never saw them fight. I certainly never saw any kind of signs of what I understand to be domestic violence now. And so as I got into this relationship and the love bombing started, I was well in, as I said, into some components of coercive control that I didn't really understand what's happening. And the reasons for that is coercive control is a really insidious pattern of manipulating a partner, and it starts very slowly with subtle things that you can't quite put your finger on, but your gut kind of starts to tell you that something might be off, but you don't really get it, and you start trying to convince yourself that it's not there. And that is all part of the process. And along with that comes isolation or attempts for isolation and breaking down some of those healthy connections you have outside of your intimate partner relationship. And that's all very intentional as well, because the partner is trying to isolate you from those that would point out certainly that there's some dysfunction in the relationship. So as that's happening, you start to second guess yourself. And so the power and ability to sort of manipulate and control increases over time. And before you know it, you've really have actually lost some sense of your footing and start a lot of self-doubt. There's you might have heard of gaslighting, which is also part of that sort of intentional creation of self-doubt and even challenging whether some things that you're seeing is really real. And so as that happens over time, you are certainly the risk for violence increases. And coercive control, you've heard there's physical violence, there's emotional violence, psychological violence, there's financial violence and sexual violence. So there's so many components, and coercive control can be one of the layers on top of those, or it can exist on its own, because really until separation was sort of on the horizon in that relationship, there wasn't any clear indicators of violence. I could certainly see red flags, and I could see the increased worry and fear that I had for myself, but I didn't immediately experience that violence. And then I had children, and so it becomes a whole other thing when you're trying to worry about your own safety, but also your children's safety, and plan for separation at that time. And so if I can talk a bit about that, even that's pretty intense, and it takes a lot of time. And for anyone that might be on the line that is dealing with this as an issue, please know that we're here for you and can support you. But it's also really important to start accessing the supports of family and friends, your neighbors, to be a part of that separation plan, because there is one of the highest parts of in domestic violence where the risk is at its highest for lethality is at separation. And that was quite true. I could certainly see the steady increasing worries, but at the point of separation, it was significantly higher. And it was places like Women's Crisis Services where late at night when it was difficult to sleep, I would call the 24/7 distress line and just talk with someone so that they could be there on the other line. And I can't tell you how huge that is. So please access those supports as well, because you really do need them in that time to plan. And it's also very difficult for people to understand that what coercive control over time in terms of increasing those risks. And so some of the behaviors that start to become more evident or as red flags would be stalking and harassment. You're getting 20 to 30 calls a day. Now, fortunately, this was about 20 years ago for me, but nowadays with texting and cell phones and social media and trackers, there's a whole other level of stalking and harassing that can exist. And it's and so being conscious of that, if you're a supporter of a person that is to their safety plan, then just being aware of those possibilities, looking out for the anomalies, and when they're talking about feeling fearful for their lives, that's a really key indicator that there is a significant threat of harm. And so helping to support them through that process, because it can be quite intense. So some of the other even in the family court system, which is a challenge, and I think David will talk a little bit about this, is trying to put forward that experience so that you have the support to manage access to your ex-partner. And that's quite a challenge in and of itself. Fortunately, a lot has changed, and there is some really positive things that are happening. And with Kira's Law, which I believe David's going to talk about, there's some really good things that will help judges to understand the potential for risks, and some of those red flags are. That's a reminder that I was at 7 minutes, so that's good to know. I've got my own timer going, Rob, so I'll pick it up a bit. Some of the other risk factors that you might want to consider, I think Jen was flagging them a bit, and that is, access to weapons, if there has been threats. Strangulation or choking is certainly a factor. And like I said, probably the most significant one to listen for is if the victim actually is expressing fear of being killed, or for that of their children or their family, because your gut instincts are usually 100% bang on, and we stop listening to them. And we actually tell kids to stop listening to them sometimes. And so I think it's really important for us to help our kids to understand, and thanks, Christine, for highlighting that, what a healthy relationship is, and how to, so that young people are facing a lot of other stressors and pressures. And there is an increase in intimate partner violence. That's really important that we're talking about it today. So it's just to wrap up, for safety planning, if you're needing that support, some of the things to think about is developing that circle of support, having documenting the interactions, making sure that you maybe break up your routine. You can have someone even park the car in your driveway, just to make it seem like there's somebody else present all the time. Setting really clear boundaries. I think as a survivor for a period, it was great for me. I thought that I had some ability to manage out the risk factors, maybe trying to control it a bit, and you really don't. You have no control over the behaviors of another person, and it's really important for you to set some clear boundaries for yourself. And having a code word is also something that can be helpful for you and your children if you need to have that as part of your safety plan. And support, be if you know of a survivor or know that somebody's going through it, be there for them, be a listening ear, be that late night phone call, be a neighbor. It was certainly a huge thing. She is your neighbor was a really pivotal moment in my healing journey. It has taken 20 years to move through it, literally, and I'm still not there yet, I can tell you that for sure. But something like She Is Your Neighbor really helped break down the shame that most survivors are carrying. And so it's really important to listen if you can, and help support projects like Women Crisis Services and some of the other social services you'll hear about tonight. So thank you for the opportunity, Rob, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your experiences. I just, as you were talking, and about people who are victims and reaching out, I was just wondering, what's your perspective on people who think someone is going through something, like a family member or a friend thinks someone is going through that period of coercive control or domestic violence? What do they do? Do they reach out to the individual, even though that individual is not reached out to them? What do you say there?
I do think that if you are worried, or you have red flags that you might be seeing, I think there is gentle ways, and I say gentle because it is tough to navigate those conversations. But I think there is ways to, you reach out to the people that you care about. Even if it's simply to say, if you need anything, I'm here. If you need a place to go to, I'm here. If you just need an ear, so even, no judgment. And to support them. And it is a rocky journey, but lots of people leave and go back because of that fear and the risks that are associated with separation. It is very hard to stay out of the relationship because you actually might feel ridiculously safer in it because you think you have that ability. So really
no, totally
sticking with
understand.
people through that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sticking
it's
with
like,
people through that.
well, we were just talking about the housing situation. If you want to escape from that, where are you going to go to? It's hard to find a place to go to. But yeah, no, thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing that, for providing some of the, the signs, indicators, and providing with some thoughts about getting out of those situations, or how we can help people that are in those situations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.
Providing some of the, the signs, indicators, and providing with some thoughts about getting out of those situations, or how we can help people that are in those situations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.